Fernando Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa para todas as pessoas.
Olá, viva, sejam bem-vindos a mais esta edição do Fernando Pessoa para todas as pessoas. Um Fernando Pessoa como nunca se ouviu. E em notícias digo-vos que o cantor e compositor italiano Mariano Deida acaba de lançar um novo disco pessoano, Faust, resultado de anos de trabalho por sobre esta obra inacabada de Fernando Pessoa. O disco Faust, de Mariano Deida, está disponível nas lojas e nas plataformas digitais habituais. Faust surge na discografia de Mariano Deida, 30 anos depois deste músico quase tão português quanto italiano editar o seu primeiro disco, sendo a obra de Deida quase toda ligada a Fernando Pessoa. Faust foi lançado com chancela da Valentim de Carvalho e foi gravado em Portugal com a polifonia do Coro do Teatro de São Carlos, dirigido por Pedro Santos, com a participação vocal de Camané numa das canções e ainda a participação especial de um grupo de músicos do jazz nacional, capitaneados por Laurent Philippe. Entretanto, amanhã, quarta-feira, dia 30 de março, entre as 6 e as 7 da tarde, a Casa Fernando Pessoa promove mais uma sessão do projeto online Perguntas na Biblioteca. Desta vez, o tema das perguntas e respostas vai girar em torno da questão: Pessoa também foi editor? Na verdade, Fernando Pessoa esteve envolvido em alguns projetos neste chapéu editorial. Foi o caso da Ibis Tipográfica e Editora e, mais tarde, da editora Olicipo. Vamos saber nesta sessão que autores e que textos Fernando Pessoa publicou e que outros planeava também vir a publicar. Qualquer pessoa pode escrever à Casa Fernando Pessoa com as suas dúvidas e questões para o e-mail info@casafernandopessoa.pt. Repito, info@casafernandopessoa.pt, recebendo também o link para a sessão Zoom, onde vai poder ouvir-se em círculo mais restrito a história que leva às respostas. A sessão Perguntas na Biblioteca da Casa Fernando Pessoa será conduzida por este vosso, pela Biblioteca do Museu e por Liliana Pacheco, da Comunicação, os dois membros da equipa da Casa Fernando Pessoa. As perguntas na Biblioteca deste 30 de março serão também transmitidas em direto na página Facebook da Casa Fernando Pessoa. Entretanto, digo-vos a fechar que continuam abertas as inscrições para a oficina online Livro do Desassossego 2, Os Críticos, com o investigador literário Jerónimo Pizarro. É uma iniciativa da Bertrand Livreiros, esta para o dia 22 de abril, uma sexta-feira, entre as 6 da tarde e as 9 da noite. Os 40 anos da primeira edição do Livro do Desassossego, publicado em 1982, são motivo para revisitar a obra-prima em prosa de Fernando Pessoa e perceber porque tem sido editada tantas vezes e de tantas formas diferentes. A oficina decorre na plataforma Zoom, tem um custo de participação de 55 euros e mais dados e informação podem ser descobertos nos lugares habituais, internet do grupo Bertrand e da Bertrand Livreiros, para saber nomeadamente como aceder à ficha de inscrição. São as notícias por hoje.
Não sou nada.
Nunca serei nada.
Não posso querer ser nada.
À parte isso.
Tenho em mim todos os sonhos do mundo.
Olá, aqui estamos então para...
Não sou nada.
Nunca serei nada.
Não posso querer ser nada.
À parte isso.
Tenho em mim todos os sonhos do mundo.
Aqui estamos então, dizia-vos, para mais uma emissão do programa Fernando Pessoa para todas as pessoas, um Fernando Pessoa como nunca se ouviu. Eu sou o Ricardo Bel de Moraes e comigo está na regi e no apoio técnico o José Carlos Malveiro. Emitimos dos nossos estúdios em Arroios, Lisboa, Portugal, para todos os cantos do mundo onde houver internet. Na emissão desta semana, vamos até ao Reino Unido para conversar com uma artista britânica que há mais de uma década se deixou apaixonar por Fernando Pessoa e acabou a gravar a sua poesia em disco. A conversa vai nos levar até Fini Beaman.
I know I alone how much it hurts this heart with no faith, no law, no melody, no thought. Only I, and none of this I can say, because feeling is like the sky, seen nothing in it to see. I know I alone how much it hurts this heart with no faith, no law, no melody, no thought. Only I, and none of this I can say, because feeling is the sky, seen nothing in it to see. I know how much this heart can hurt. I know I alone how much it hurts this heart with no faith, no Lord, no melody, no thought. Only I, and none of this I can say, because feeling is the sky, seen nothing in it to see.
Aí ficamos com este I Know, I Alone, parecendo que não é Fernando Pessoa na tradução do Prémio Pessoa 2012, Reach the Zenith, e um dos temas que a nossa convidada desta semana, a cantora, compositora e multi-instrumentista britânica Fini Beaman, gravou, neste caso, no seu álbum Burn the Boat, de 2016. Fini Beaman é a nossa convidada desta semana. A nossa conversa, por razões óbvias, terá lugar em inglês. Fini Beaman, good evening. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us.
Hola! Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
You're welcome. Well, it's a conversation that has been virtually 5 years in the making. And finally, we get to settle on it. Mostly, well, there is always a silver lining even for the worst of things, and the pandemic forced us here to incorporate Zoom in our broadcasts. So, well, this means that we can now easily have this sort of cross-world and cross the English Channel moments. So finally, we'll be chatting about our Pessoa. Thank you again for this hour of your busy schedule. Well, to kick off things, as you know, given your passion, I could say passion on Pessoa, and the several questions I have been saving for this moment, an introductory one would be if you do remember when and also under what specific circumstances you came across Fernando Pessoa's work.
I remember very clearly. And actually, the situation was that I had become very enamored, beguiled by bossa nova.
Yes.
By songwriters like Milton Nascimento and João Gilberto and Maria Rita, and I wanted to write my own Brazilian pop song. And I don't speak Portuguese, although I've sung a lot of bossa novas, of course. That, of course, only means that I can say I miss you like the moon misses the ocean. I can't actually have a conversation. Such a beautiful language, and I wanted to write a song. So I started doing a little investigation to find someone to set, and obviously someone had recommended, maybe they'd recommended Pessoa, or I think perhaps I'd been to Lisboa and I saw his statue and I thought this is an interesting figure, and I think it just sort of clicked. And I came across the poem. I don't know if is it called Feita Vida?
No, it doesn't have a title in this case, so we use the first verse. Tenho em mim como uma bruma. I have in me like a mist.
Yeah, yeah, like a haze. I love this opening line. It's so evocative, and it's like it's existential,
indeed,
and sort of fatalistic, and I'm really drawn to that kind of language anyway. And I saw the translation, but of course I wanted to sing it in Portuguese.
That was quite risky.
It was, and listening back now, I think. In fact, I was I was dating a guy from São Paulo a few years ago.
Okay.
And he and so I'd set Tenho em mim, and I'd called the track Feita Vida. I smoked my life. Is that right? I smoked my love.
Indeed, yes.
And he sort of found my accent quite amusing, which made me a bit paranoid. But I was over 10.
You can I'm a suspect, but I can tell you that it was a great work, especially for a first tryout, and the braveness of it, of you singing Pessoa for the first time in our Portuguese language, instead of choosing, for example, an English version like the one I played moments ago. I know I alone. Well, after you sang Pessoa, your track Feita Vida, in your 2011 album Step Up, did you feel curious to investigate more about Pessoa's poetry, and on the other hand also his prose?
I think I've done a little bit of prose, but actually I was sort of prohibited purely on the fact that I found it quite hard to find translations. So there's lots of books of translations of poetry, so that was really easy. But I like books rather than like reading on the internet, and I found that hard. At least, hey, this is maybe 10 years ago, and at the time I couldn't find translations. I'm sure that would be different now. So I've definitely read more poetry than prose.
Yeah. So you have worked musically both with Fernando Pessoa's poetry in Portuguese and in English. In your readings, so this is what I was wondering about this, have you read any of his English poetry, the poems that he wrote directly in English and not the translations, the English translations of his Portuguese work?
You know, I don't think that I have, and I know that he wrote under different pseudonyms.
Indeed.
But I don't think, and again, I need to revise my Pessoa. But I think I don't recall reading. Did he write a lot in English?
Oh yes.
What?
Well, due to the fact that he spent so many years living in Durban, when he was a child and later a teenager. So, he eventually, even though Portuguese was spoken inside his home by his mother, his stepfather, the fact is that he was forced to act and behave and think, school-wise and street-wise in terms of English. So it became virtually his mother language. And when he began to exercise poetry, the fictional personas that he began to come up with were all English identities, and they wrote in English, both prose and poetry, and several of them even lasted for a couple of years. He was using one called Alexander Search when he was back in Lisbon as late as 1907, 1908. So he wrote a lot of English poetry. And he has even two books that he issued, first and foremost in 1918, and then a revised edition, sort of like revised, enhanced, and enlarged of his English poems, volumes 1, 2, and 3. So in 1918 and 1921. So if you look him up, you'll have a ton of probable new inspiration for your, who knows, future musical endeavors, but still. Putting us forward a few years to your Burn the Boat album in 2016, you finally managed to create a song using the poem I Know I Alone. What exactly, so that was also what I was interested in knowing, what exactly got your attention, your eye, your ear, your soul maybe, regarding this particular poem?
Well, I think I wouldn't say that after my one and only foray singing in Portuguese, I thought never again. But I think when I first got into Pessoa, I recall now that when I saw stuff in English, I thought, well, I'm not interested in the English. Whereas as now you remind me, and I think, oh, I'm gonna dig in some English Pessoa. Whereas at the time I thought, well, I want to sing in Portuguese. I want to make it harder for myself. So I think, but I think, I have some collections of his works, and I wanted to find something I think I thought I would like to do something in English, but I want to do something of his. And I think because of the kind of simplicity and the straight ahead sort of directness of I Know I Alone, I felt like, I think the challenge, I've heard people say before that when you work with translations, that to be a poetry translator is to be a poet. And you're, you know, in a sense, you're it's another poem. You have to reimagine this poem in a new language. And I think that was something that put me off doing that. But I felt like with I Know Alone, it's symbolically, like it's so strong and sort of direct that I didn't feel like, I felt like I wasn't being fobbed off. I wasn't being tricked with the translation. It was probably quite, you know, on the nose.
When you consider both poems, the Portuguese one you sang in Fumei a Vida, and then this I Know I Alone, they're actually quite different. They're from the same writer, but they're from different stages of life. One could say that the first one, Fumei a Vida, is more. You can find sort of like a Fernando Pessoa that's looking more into his own self, his inner mind, his inner soul. And as you were saying, I Know I Alone is much more blunt and more direct. To some extent, you also sang it accordingly.
Yeah, and I think that was partly a compositional choice of wanting to write something that had a short song form and a direct message. So this poem just made sense because it was so succinct. And I also treated it. I want to treat it rhythmically. So like I know. I alone, like something I talk about a lot with my songwriting students is the sort of natural intonation in text, and how as songwriters we don't really have to move. If we have text, we don't need to move far to get a melody because there's already a melody in text. And Portuguese is like no other language in that way. It's so melodic and it's so it's got such beautiful shapes. But yeah, so actually it was just a case of reading the poem out loud, and I found this rhythm, and it's kind of it's not aggressive, but it's just like, you know, it's rhythmically sort of direct and sort of I want to say defensive, but with conviction, you know. So Indeed. I think that's how it sort of became in that way. And whereas For Me a Vida was so much more inspired and driven by my absolute love of bossa nova and like Brazilian songwriters. So I think there were two different agendas.
To some extent, you even followed their path, I could say, because well, this you probably know, Brazilian singers and composers are absolutely mad about Pessoa's poetry. They probably have sang Pessoa's work much more than Portuguese artists. So you were following their path. And one thing I would like to share with you in terms of information is the fact that when you were talking about the way that that it felt like there was music and there was a certain construction that you had it somewhat easy to transport in terms of music, Pessoa's words. I was wondering if you by any chance knew, were informed or read it by chance, that he even had one of his editorial projects was a book called Songbook. So he was writing a series of dozens and dozens of poems where he was actually considering the sort of poetry that would be easier to turn into music. Did you know of that, of his songbook project?
I didn't know of this, and this sounds glorious. did he? Was this completed?
Well, it wasn't completed, so he left a ton of projects to be published while he was alive. In terms of Portuguese language, he only managed to publish a Portuguese book and those collections of English poems that I told you about in 1918 and 1921. So, and then finally he comes up with the Portuguese book of poems, Message, in 1934.
Wow.
But we have dozens of editorial projects, so he was pretty good at planning what his future work would be in terms of books to be released, but he didn't manage to get them. He was such the perfectionist that he was always working on the poems and then reworking them and reworking them. So this sort of like delayed many of his projects. But it was easy to investigate his trunk, the wooden trunk where he left his thousands of papers when he died. And there you would be finding more and more poems that were eventually gathered together in terms of the Cancioneiro, the songbook project that Fernando Pessoa had. Many researchers were working on it. Richard Zenith was one of them.
Yeah.
So you'll probably have again. Well, this is me being the ambassador I can be, and even having your experience and your voice in mind. Here I am, sort of like enticing you to carry on your work on Pessoa. So. If you look at the songbook project of Pessoa, I'm sure, again, you will find a few dozens of poems that, who knows, maybe in the future you will be able to turn into new songs. I was also wondering if you were aware of Fernando Pessoa's heteronyms, the fictional three creatures that he created to author a ton of his work. And if you knew them or knew of them, I was also wondering if you had a favorite one.
Well, one is just Pessoa, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are four.
Yes, Pessoa. Then he created Álvaro de Campos, the naval engineer, and Alberto Caeiro, the poet of nature, and Ricardo Reis, the poet of the classical odes, sort of like the ones from ancient Greece and ancient Rome.
Yeah, actually, the first book that I got was split into the four characters.
Yeah.
So it at first I was confused, and I was like, I've just bought a book of Pessoa, and then I've got these other
guys. Yeah.
And I don't. So I naturally, like at first, I went to the Pessoa section because I thought, well, I don't know what I've done here, but I wanted to read Pessoa. But I think I've read all of them. I mean, you know, in the books that I've had where they've been split up, I've enjoyed the different writers. But I think there is something about, like I was saying before, this kind of slightly fatalistic side to Pessoa. This, you know, just like I've smoked my life. This kind of nothing. You know, nothing is of any consequence. And I really enjoy writers like that because, I mean, art, you know, if you're that far down the sort of an existential line, or you know, if nothing is of any consequence, then art is completely pointless. Yet we spend our whole lives making it. So I think I was drawn. There's just something there for me that hooked me.
Well, when you consider the Fernando Pessoa that you first came to contact before your 2011 album, what would you say is your current perception of him as a writer, someone who inspires you, when you compare the this perception you have of Pessoa now in 2022 with the perception that you had of him in 2011, in fact 11 years ago?
Do you mean how has it changed?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
I think I'm more drawn to the characteristic of his writing now. I think at the time, like I was saying, I was having a real love affair with the language, and I enjoyed his style, like in the translations, but I don't think, how old was I? 25, no. Actually, when I wrote the song, I was 23. When I wrote For Mea Vida, I was 23, and I was in a slightly different head space to where I am now in my mid 30s. So I think naturally it resonates differently, just like Tenho a mim, just like For Mea Vida, like life feels very different when you're in your 20s, and at the time I was living in Berlin and in Germany and learning another language, and I could do whatever I want. I could do whatever I wanted, and I was very free. And I mean, I think also I was drawn to Brazilian songs for that reason, I think, as well, and the romanticism of it, the color in the language, and now maybe it resonates on a slightly deeper level because I get it, I understand it more.
Yeah. So you keep in touch with the Brazilian culture, the Brazilian music. Your latest album has some cross references with the South American culture, language, and atmosphere, I would say.
Yeah, I certainly it came at a time that music came at a time in a formative point of my life where, like, the Brazilian music and the culture and the kind of romanticism and the whole package, I think it's really had an impact and influence on my music writing. And whilst I think at some point I thought, well, I don't speak Portuguese, so I have at times thought, well, I don't speak Portuguese, so I shouldn't sing it, but then I'll sing bossa nova. So, but it's still on my list that I learn Portuguese, and then I can
wonderful
sing it, and not be ashamed.
Well, you certainly have no reason to be so when we consider your work on Pessoa. They have been two of my favorite tracks in my now on hold jazz program, the Jazz Voices, the one that I had when I asked for your music. And of course, both For Mea Vida and I Know I Alone have been constantly in our playlist here in the Fernando Pessoa program. I wouldn't like to let you go without saying that if you need any sort of further inspiration or information on Fernando Pessoa, as I always say, both myself personally and of course Casa Fernando Pessoa House Museum will be here also and always to give you, any piece of information that you might need, should you feel seduced, curious, or enticed to, there's no two without a third, right?
Exactly.
So here's hoping for your third song on Pessoa and from Pessoa. I'll be saying goodbye now, thanking you for this moment of your time. And I'll be giving our viewers and listeners a taste of your Portuguese accent now, going further back, into our time machine to 2011 to let everyone hear your "I Smoked My Life," Fumei a Vida, from your 2011 album Step Up. The first time that you fell under my radar, so to speak, because by then, that is also curious about you, by then it was really strange and quite unusual to see a UK artist getting to sing Pessoa, even more so when you consider singing in the Portuguese language. Well, thank you so much for your time, Fini.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
Again, it was a pleasure. And again, here we are. Should you need any assistance in further adventures with Pessoa. For now, here is Fumei a Vida for our goodbyes. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
De coisa nenhuma, o desejo de